While we're waiting, how long do we go?
We'll be finished this by 5:10. Yours will be. Hello, and welcome to the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live only on BeExposedRadio.com. I'm Nate, your host, and we're live as we are every Friday at 5. I'm having a really interesting day. The wind kind of threw me through a storm. Everything has been disconnecting and reconnecting and pausing and processing. But I'm here. We're ready. I have a very interesting guest, Miss Jamie McDonald, that we'll be having an interesting conversation. We'll learn a lot about just going off of that strength that you have within yourself. And building off of that strength that you have. Often we're trying to connect the dots and figure out what our strategy is, and we look everywhere but within ourselves. And we had an interesting workshop that she leads with her company, her organization, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, what she does, and how you can be better at what you do and finding that thing for yourself. So we're not going to pause it anymore. Without further ado, I want to welcome Miss Jamie McDonald to the Artist Exchange Radio Show. You got to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Nate. It's great to be here.
I hope everything's been going well for you during this pandemic. How has it been doing because you're used to small groups or big groups and having meetings. Yeah. How has this quarantine been for you?
You know, I think that, look, I'm fortunate. I've had a comfortable place to be the whole time. I have good broadband. I've been able to continue on with my work and my life. And, my family's all safe and healthy. So in the scheme of everything, I think we've fared as well as one could fare in this moment. I think though that this last 12 months for me and for so many people I interact with, whatever their life circumstances are, I think that it has been a time when people have looked at what they're doing and just, with all the uncertainty in the world, kind of thinking about like, if we're going to continue to live in this crazy world that we've been going through for the last year, but really even for the couple years before that politically, where do we want our energy to be? How do we want to be focused? And so that's been a lot of what I've spent the last year doing, is really thinking about, how I was showing up in the world and where I was making my mark and who I was impacting and supporting and helping. And I've gotten a lot of clarity around that this last year.
And I think this pandemic has definitely given us a moment to pause, but at the same time, I felt like everything that I needed to get done found a way to get done, and I had the time. I was rested, I didn't have to worry about getting dressed and going to meetings across town and downtown, and but everything felt like it was lining up. And I think we all needed this break in this moment in time to kind of reimagine and reorganize the things in life that we say we want, we already are doing, or things that we hadn't even thought about doing, that we had to find ways to be creative in our communication and our effectiveness and our professionalism, because, with internet going in and out, it's not very professional, but we had to figure out how to make all this computer technology work for us.
But I would say, I think in some ways, I think one of the good things that has come from the fact that we have been living this virtual life is that I think in some ways we see one another as fuller human beings.
Yes.
Because we see into somebody's home, we see their dogs go by. You'll certainly see mine at some point while we're talking. You see your dogs go by, or you see people's kids, or you see that they live in a beautiful place with a brick wall behind them. And you get, I don't know, you get a different sense for people that they're not just what they do, but they're also who they are. And that, I think, has been, there have been a lot of things that have been hard about this last year, but I think sitting on Zooms is an exhausting thing. I think for a lot of people, and particularly for a lot of young people and kids, like I can't imagine what it's like to try to be on Zooms all the time. But I do think that sense that we give each other a little more grace about the craziness of our personal lives, and that we know that I've got dogs and kids, and I don't know. I think that part of things has been good.
Right. It definitely, I think it humanizes, as you said, and it gave a lot of grace, as you said, because often we don't think about people being parents or having a home life. Normally, when we're working, we're trying to get done what we need to get done. And I've working with children virtually for a year, since last March, has really humbled me in terms of my patience, me being better at communicating, me being more creative and not just teaching from experience or from a book. I had to learn how to literally all that was to the side, and I had to get on their level for once. And not just teaching and not just being an artist, but really connecting with people, because this is a barrier, but we've been able to see so much more. As you said, we got to see the humanity in people. I first met you at a workshop at Impact Hub. You have an organization. Can you tell us a little bit about your overall organization, and then we'll get into the individual parts of it?
Yeah. So I'm actually doing something that's slightly different right now, but for the last 7 years, I've been working with entrepreneurs and change makers and creative people to under the umbrella of an organization called The Courageous, and my goal was to both share a set of experiences that I've had in my own life and that I've learned from working alongside other movement builders. But I think that really the thing I always found the most compelling about the work I did in the workshops, like the one that you attended, is, I found just the thing that you were saying at the very beginning, that that often I was able to help people unlock that thing in themselves that they didn't even realize was their superpower, right?
Right.
And so I could teach them technical things, right? Like I could teach you how to present more effectively, or I could teach you how to do, build your personal, or company brand, or your organization brand. But the reality is, I think what was most helpful for people who came through that workshop was, if I have a superpower, like we all have our own thing, I just tend to see people's, like that thing about them that is uniquely amazing and can like help them see it for themselves. Like I can kind of hold up a mirror to them and say, like, don't you see this amazing thing that you have? I know you're like trying to do this work thing, or you're trying to do this creative thing, but your genius and your beauty is in this thing that's inside you. And you're just pushing it out this way, but there are a whole lot of ways that you can do that. And that I think that's been one of the bits of magic in those workshops. I think that the other part is that I've always been focused on the curation of the people who were there side by side. And so the relationships that often develop across people in those small workshops, and the fact that so many of them, as you've described to me, like those relationships carry forward. So now they're not just learning from whatever they learn in the week that they spend in the workshop, but they're also got a group of people that they can continue to grow with and lean on and have fun with and be friends with. And I think the power of that sort of the personal learning combined with the group learning, and the group, like, that sense of energy that comes when a group is really vibing, that is what I've really valued in being part of those workshops.
But and to take that a step further, what I think it did for me was, many of us here in Baltimore, being such a small place, for entrepreneurs and artists and activists and community leaders alike. When we see each other now, even the ones that I haven't kept in contact, I know you,
Right.
and we're
Exactly.
able to, ask each other what's going on, what's new, and find ways to kind of bring ourselves into it or support that person. And now when I see certain events happening, I know that person, so I feel more of an obligation to support it or go out to it or Zoom in it, link into it, and it really it created a sense of community amongst people who knew each other but didn't really know each other or didn't know each other at all. And
you might remember, because it's been a couple years since we did that workshop together, but the very first thing that we ask everyone to do is to tell their personal story in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think that is such an underestimated, powerful thing, that when people tell their personal stories and you start off seeing them as a human being with, things that because I think we all see each other, and because of how we look or because of whatever the setting is where we meet each other, we form a little story in our own mind of the person we're seeing. And so often, if we actually learn that person's story, we are usually so far off, right? Like you just don't really know. You certainly don't know anything beyond the surface, right? And so I think when you start off telling your personal stories, it makes the whole rest of the workshop or whatever that experience is that you go through together, like you have those points of connection that just start the collaboration and the sharing and the openness going, that makes the whole experience richer. And I don't know, I'm always surprised that often I'm in things, I'm sure you are too, where people say, okay, we want you to do a 1 minute intro, your name, your company, your this or that, right? And the truth is, that's almost like the worst thing to ask about somebody, right? Is like just like where they work or, right? What I think if you're going to do a short intro, you should do something like, your name and the hardest moment of your life, or something that like draws people in and can help them see you in more 3 dimensions
and forces you to open up, because often and it was people that even at that workshop that I have known for years, but to hear their personal stories. I'm trying to remember the gentleman who owns the barbershop. I had gone to that barbershop before, right? Mr. Troy, I had gone to that barbershop before. I had, gone to events there, but I never took the time to kind of personally know him or introduce myself. And listening to his story and other people's story that I know. I mean, me and Love went to college together. I knew her as Love the Poet, the big host of Baltimore poetry scene. Didn't know personal stories about her. And it really allowed me to kind of get into people. And ultimately, it forced me to open up, because I'm the person that I spectate and I listen. I'm a good shoulder, but it forced me to open up and be able to make myself human in front of people. Because I think when we all go through this entrepreneurship thing, we try to be stronger than what we actually are, because it's tough. And you don't want people to look at you and create a bias about you, because you need their support, you need their help. And we've been shown that weaknesses aren't good. But actually, if you show that vulnerability, it actually makes people want to talk to you more, and people who would normally have conversation for you will open up and have a conversation with you, because they see something, one, that's in common. You see commonalities in people who we didn't think, we had similarities with. So
that's so true.
I kept that workshop with me for a minute, because it's really, and I took a lot of notes that week, and even after the fact, once we had a reunion, you welcomed us to your home, and I took a lot of notes based off of what people were saying from the previous groups that you had did, the cohorts that you had before, and it was just interesting to hear people's reaction from being in the midst of that group to moving forward, and how life kind of changed a little bit once they learned how to be real and be honest and just be open, because it's hard enough trying to be an artist and an entrepreneur and topple that with, being a closed off person? How are you building relationships? That's kind of the reason for the artist exchange, is to work on engagement. And I'm horrible at it, but on a one-on-one basis, I can talk to people.
I think you're being hard on yourself. I think one of the gifts that you underestimate in yourself, and people that are like you, is like the power of what it means to be a good listener. Right? There is a real power in listening, because if you think about really who's in control in a conversation, right? The person who asks the good questions and then sits and listens, they're actually the ones in control in the conversation, right? So, so and I think that people on the other end, the ones who are being engaged and being asked to talk, particularly if you're helping them talk about not just what they do or whatever, but who they are and what they're passionate about. Like, I think that is a gift not to be underestimated. You should give yourself more credit for the power that sits in you to draw that out of people, and to use the power of listening to really shape the way you can make an impact in the world, the way you show up. I think that it's a gift I would not sell short.
And it's something that, for me, I'm learning how to be more aware of. It's just, and that today's topic is, building on that strength. And I kind of been looking at, and one of the reasons I reached out to you is because I started looking back over my journal, and I got to a point where we were at that week of the meeting, and I had a lot of hesitation, because I was thrust into this opportunity with Impact Hub to be around all of these go-getters. And I'm trying to figure out, well, where, I know what my thing is, but I can't put a play on in the middle of this room right now. I can't, teach a class of students right now. What am I left with? Like, what am I, what are the things that I could do to be a part of this conversation? And I started looking over my journal, and I, realized how far I had come once. So being aware of that strength, but what else I wanted to do, how far out I wanted to push it, and creating that platform for myself. Where are you now with Courage? I know you're in a different part of your business right now. So where are you with Courageous, and what are you currently working on?
So look, the community that I built through the Courageous and doing those workshops, eventually after the workshop that I did with you, I really started those in Baltimore, and I ended up doing that work around the country, and then ultimately around the world. And in 2019, I was like all over the place doing workshops with people who were very much like the group that you were with in Baltimore, change makers and artists and entrepreneurs and big thinkers. I call it like edge thinkers, the people that kind of are out there on the edge. But I realized that, as I was thinking about, particularly when COVID hit, really thinking, I'm in my mid 50s. And so, I look forward, and I mean, it's hard for me to imagine ever not working, but I've been married a long time, and my husband wants a traditional retirement. Like, who knows, what lies ahead of me. But I kind of figured if I had a last big sprint towards something, that I wanted to think about what that really would be. And, for me, that is all about Baltimore. And so, after traveling for really a couple of years, I wanted to recenter my energy in Baltimore. And, and the thing that I've come to realize is, there's so many things that are beautiful and strong and vibrant and healthy in Baltimore. And that the world doesn't know, incidentally, which, you go everywhere else, and you have to like justify, your love of Baltimore.
I've found a couple ways to do it in my elevator pitch.
I mean, look, I always just say, like, if you come, you'll know. right? Like, because you can't really convince people if all they do is listen to what's in the media. So, so I realized that what I feel like I can contribute, there are a lot of different places. There's so many needs and opportunities, but what I got the chance to do was to work, over these, I was an entrepreneur and, now I've worked with so many entrepreneurs across the country, was that we have too many Baltimoreans who don't feel like they're, part of the knowledge economy, the 21st century economy, right? That they, that we've got a city where, we still have largely a pre-digital economy cities. And what I mean by that is we're a city that's anchored in small businesses, like neighborhood and Main Street businesses, and then big companies. And any great city needs those to be strong. You need thriving, dynamic small businesses because they're neighborhood anchors. Their owners are usually leaders in neighborhoods. As I said, there she goes. And so you need those. And there's a lot of good focus in the city on how we support small businesses. We have big businesses in the city that get a lot of attention from the GBC and the city government and all kinds of people. What we've been missing in Baltimore is that like 21st century economy, right? It's the tech-enabled startups. It's the innovators who are really using technology to change the world. So not social impact kind of change makers in the nonprofit sense,
right?
But the kinds of innovators who are using like 21st century technologies to think about how we build a different world. And so I've become CEO of an entity called Upsurge Baltimore, and Upsurge is really, we've got a really giant goal, Nate. This won't surprise you if you remember my 10x thinking, right? 10x, not 10%. So we have a goal to be the country's first equitech city. So to build the first inclusive innovation economy in the country. And what that means is that we really want to support, celebrate, and attract companies that are grounded in the advantages of diversity, that are led by underestimated founders. And when I say underestimated, that's a kind of a bigger term because, one, they are underestimated. Amazing founders who people don't give enough credit for what they could accomplish, but they often come from BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous people of color, women, LGBT, differently abled people. So that whole thing is sort of what I think of as underestimated founders.
Right.
If you think about the tech world, and you just use capital investment as a proxy for like who's valued as a founder, those kind of underestimated founders get this tiny sliver of the investment dollars that go into tech, right? The vast majority of tech still goes to, people from pretty traditional, pedigreed backgrounds, generally white men, like nothing against, like there's plenty of good white men out there. So I'm not saying this as like a,
but it's not equally distributed.
But it is not equal. And and I think that it's, fortunately the world is waking up to this because there are so many exciting companies that, that are increasingly led by people from diverse backgrounds or that are engaging, teams and boards and leadership from diverse backgrounds. But it's also increasingly a quantitative, measurable, thing that you can look at. So, it has now been shown in study after study after study that this is not an obligation, this is an opportunity, that companies that have diverse teams, leadership, and perspectives perform better than companies that don't. On the numbers, right? So this is not charity, this is like investment. And so what I'm trying to do is, there was a group of people that approached me and they said, look, we want to be like the next Austin or the next Boston or the next LA or New York. And I was just like, look, I get that. Like those cities, there's a lot going on there. They're fun to visit. I understand that, but I just said, if that's really the goal, I don't think I'm the person for that job. For me, I don't want to be the head of the next anything. I want to be the head of the first something.
Okay.
Right. And so, I think we have a chance in Baltimore. We are an intensely brilliant and diverse city. We are a place where, we have such strengths, right? From, our 13 universities, 2 historically Black colleges, plus UMBC right around the corner, plus University of Maryland, Baltimore, plus amazing, science and research and art. And like, there's so much here that, that we have to build on, that I think we are so well positioned to be the country's first equitech city. And as I've been talking with people both in Baltimore and around the country about this vision, people just get it. They get it. And so that's what I'm working on now. And it's a 10-year vision. It will not happen overnight. We will not be able to show in a year that we are the hub of equitech in the world. It's going to take some time, but we're doing the big work and the big visioning and intense engagement across the city and across the country to get support for this idea. And that's what I'm up to.
How does the small mom and pop, as you spoke of, independent artists, educational spaces, how do they benefit from this? Or how, that learning curve and getting those businesses up to a stature where they can be, looked at, but how do all these businesses or artists fit into that?
It's a great question. And I think the way we've got to think about it is sort of with an ecosystem lens. So no one entity can be everything to everybody, right? Okay. And if you try to be everything, you might remember, we talked about this in the workshop, like, if you try to be everything to everybody, you're essentially nothing to everybody, right?
Yep.
Because
including yourself.
Right. You can't, I actually think about things the other way. So I tend to think that you want to be intensely important to a small group of people.
Okay.
So when I look at Baltimore right now, there are a lot of incredible organizations that are working to support the small mom and pop business, the artists, and the big companies on both sides, right? So if you think about, Impact Hub and Innovation Works and all the accelerators and incubators across the city, there are a lot of amazing groups that are working with what I think of as Main Street entrepreneurs or neighborhood entrepreneurs and artists. That's not my world right now. But what we can do is there's that moment when certain entrepreneurs decide that their vision for themselves and their business is something that's more than just the neighborhood or Baltimore, that they want to be national or they want to be global, right? And so that's when they cross from being Impact Hub and Innovation Works to being Upsurge, right?
Okay.
So because again, like, we're not trying to step on anyone's toes. Those organizations do an amazing job. They are filling an important, need in Baltimore for those kinds of companies. And there's a bunch of others that also do that work. Those two I'm particularly passionate about.
I agree.
And so, but we're trying to fill this gap with something where there wasn't that same level of intensity and focus to really support those entrepreneurs as they make the leap from being potentially a Main Street entrepreneur into wanting to be national or wanting to be global, to wanting to do something that scales. That's the expertise that our group will bring. And the reason that that's important, Nate, is because we on top of all the other things that, Baltimore has an opportunity to build, we need more 21st century jobs. And in so many of, our Main Street businesses, if they're really small, they can only pay a certain amount, right? So you pay maybe at the top end for a typical worker, they're paying $15 or maybe $20 an hour, right? If that's what you're making, that can help you sustain yourself, but you're probably not building wealth. You're probably not like moving up in your life in this, like, if you have a family, and you have a new baby and you're still, you're making $20 an hour and you add another child to the mix, right? Like it's challenging. And those companies are small. So there's only so far that somebody can move up unless you're the owner. And you know this because you've owned a business. Sometimes the owners are the last ones to get paid, not the first ones, right?
If at all.
That's right. If at all. We've both been there, right? So, you know, so they're really critical businesses to thriving neighborhoods and local economies. But they do, but they have limitations, just like every kind of business has its own set of limitations. But what the kind of companies, scale companies have, which is really what I'm trying to plug into, is it's a job, profile that tends to start higher. People make more right from the outset. Often they come from Main Street businesses. So you cut your teeth working for a company where you're a salesperson or you're a clerk or you're an accountant or you're a designer. And if you can move from a Main Street type company into a scale company, now you make a little more, and you often have more opportunities to move up because those companies, they're growing fast. They tend to get a little bit bigger, right? So it's one more piece of the jobs puzzle in Baltimore. And, but there are a lot of Baltimoreans who have not felt like they've been welcomed into the knowledge economy, right? That in some ways, sometimes the way that I talk about it is like, it's sort of like there are two countries, right? And there's a country that speaks French and a country that speaks Spanish. And the people in the knowledge economy have a culture and a language that not everyone feels they can approach, right? And so it's just like if you go to another country, you're brilliant, you're smart, and like you're dynamic, people should want to be around you, but you go to a place where you don't speak the language or know the culture and you feel uncomfortable. Right. And I think that that's true in this world too, that, people think about tech. And if you're from an underestimated community, all those communities we talked about, if you're a woman, if you're LGBT, if you're Black, if you've never felt like you've been welcomed into the knowledge economy and you don't know the culture and the language, you have that same sense that people feel when they go to a foreign country and they don't know if they fit in, right? And so in some people are brave, right? And they plow ahead and they're like, the heck with you, I'm going to show you I belong here, right? But it shouldn't have to be that way. It should be that we build an innovation economy where all people know that they belong, right? They don't have to choose that as their path any more than a privileged white kid always chooses that the knowledge economy is their path. Plenty of them become chefs and artists and other things that are different, right?
Right.
But they know that it's a choice. And for a lot of our neighbors, they don't even know that it's a choice. And so we want to sort of open that door and say, look, if you choose, there's a place for you in the knowledge economy, right? You belong in tech, and there are opportunities here that can help you, build on what you learn working in, a Main Street or a Baltimore focused business, and work in a scale company where you can take that a step further. And you can probably work in a job where you get paid a little more, there's more upward mobility, and you probably have benefits, right? So they're different. It's a different job profile that just kind of can move people along the curve. And our challenge, Nate, and I'm really clear about this, our challenge is that in a lot of cities, when knowledge economies have grown, they have grown to the exclusion of the people who live in those cities.
And it's always connected to something on the other side of the world or another space. Yeah.
Sometimes it's that, but sometimes it's just that these companies are so successful that a lot of people make a lot of money, and they basically they either price out or they don't welcome. They don't make a point of saying, wait, we're building something where more people in our city should share in this, this possibility that we're building together. Right.
Right.
And so we've got to be really intentional in this work to think about all the things that come along with this, right? So how do we make sure that, we're thinking about the implications for education, for transportation, for real estate, We can't do we can't do all those things. Then we'd be the government. We're not the government, right? But what we can do is we can be a voice in those conversations saying, look, if we want more people to participate in the 21st century economy, then we need 21st century education. We need 21st century transportation. We need new real estate practices that let people build wealth in place, right?
Yeah, to keep them here.
To keep them here. So that our Baltimore residents, as they build their wealth and their stability, no matter what zip code or neighborhood they're from, they can choose to stay in their neighborhood, to buy a house in their neighborhood, to, or if they want to. Again, like none of this is all a matter of just like the currency of possibility, the fact that we should all feel that we have the same possibilities.
And that's very important, especially that at home feel, because even as an artist, I'm looking at where I would land, Atlanta or New York for theater, for art and culture, and they're both on the extremes of wealth and affordability. But at the same time, I've had that whole, like, do I leave Baltimore? Because if I leave Baltimore, I'm taking me away from Baltimore as well. Not just going to something that's beneficial to me. I'm leaving a part of me, is going with me that should be still here.
Well,
how do I keep that grounded feeling here and still get all that I need out of the city without having to travel out and, a la carte everything? Where's that hub here? Yeah. So that sounds like where you're after with the tech side of things. How ready currently is the city in terms of what industries are here? Maybe not specifically, but are there enough to really take us here, or are you trying to build that here at the same time?
I think in everything in life, I always think in like loops, right? So if you think about how so many things in life work, like they kind of go like this, they loop, and even if they're going higher, it's never like a straight line. Life isn't that way, right? So we have a lot to build on here. Okay. But the reality is that if you think about that looping concept of like how things tend to go, you've got to get started and try things. You got to look at what industries are here, and then you figure out, almost always you'll identify that they're missing pieces, right? So we know that one thing that's an issue right now is, the education system in Baltimore is such that we have a lot of, too many of our young people who don't finish school, right? They don't finish high school. And, everybody doesn't need to go to college, but if you don't finish high school, it's really hard to get a job that can pay a family sustaining wage. So the talent pool gets compressed because we have a lot of people in Baltimore who don't get to that base stage of finishing high school, right? And then if you think about this looping thing, right? So there are a lot of industries, like there are jobs that go wanting in Baltimore. They want to hire here and they can't find people. And so part of what we have to do is it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Like you've got to get people started to be skilled up. Then the jobs have to be there, right? But often the jobs are like, look, I've got to look elsewhere because right now the jobs aren't here. So that's why I'm saying it's this looping thing, right? It's got to start, and then the other thing has to catch up to it. And that's when the loop kind of finishes that first revolution, right? Then you go into the second revolution, and now it's like, okay, we've got more people that are ready for this kind of job. Now we need, like, what are the next set of skills that we need so people can move to the next level of job, right? Or the next industry. So that's why I take this long view of it. It's I look at this as a 10-year project. And, it's because we've got a lot of good things to build on, but we've got a lot of places where the need and the supply, the supply and and they're out of balance. And so we'll fix one loop of supply and demand, and then we'll go to the next one. And I think
I know you may not be, in the world of necessarily education, but we have a lot of programs that are starting off students. But my question would be, how do they maintain that interest? Because as a teacher, I see a lot of initiatives happening for this group of students at this grade level, and then I see it way up here on this grade level, but the connecting train or the journey,
I
it
know.
just dropped off. So you say a lot of people not finishing school. It's not they're not maintaining the interest of the students.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I don't know if you've ever met a local Black entrepreneur named Phil Krosky. Have you ever crossed paths with him?
Mm-hmm.
So Phil, he's the CEO of a company called Maryland Energy Advisors. He started off, small, and he's got, 50 people around the country now and growing really fast. And, and the thing that he talked about is, he said, we need things like the entrepreneurship clubs and the robotics clubs and the computer clubs to be as popular as AAU basketball. And then to have that kind of structure. Because if you think about like sports, they start with a league for kids when they're 7 years old.
Yeah.
And then
barely able to hold the bat.
Well, exactly. And then AAU basketball, they're teaching those kids the fundamentals of whatever basketball is, starting at 7 years old. And then there's AAU basketball through college, right? Yeah. So think about if we had that kind of like starting at a really young age, that you were building a pipeline of people who wanted to live in this world. Jason Bass is another one I talked to. Jason's on my team now with Upsurge. I've talked with Jason a lot because Jason was always a brilliant, creative, not sport-oriented guy, right?
Right.
But he felt very pushed, like he just said, where he grew up to be a guy who wanted to like be a designer or like a creative was not as celebrated. He didn't feel like that was something that was, as celebrated in his. First of all, we hold sports in every level, every part of society. We hold sports on a pedestal. So, but I do think that in some communities, we also hold entrepreneurs on a pedestal in a way that makes it more of a pathway for people who see themselves in the faces of entrepreneurs. It's why.
But that's normally when you're already at the space of it. It's not along the way. You're normally, okay, I want to do this business, and it's like a crash course of everything. Versus if you would have gotten that along the way, you would be prepared.
You're hitting it on the head. That's kind of the point, right? It's if we thought about preparing for the knowledge economy more like we thought about like AAU basketball or pick any youth sports league, right? I think we'd have a whole different. You could even think about it in art, right? Like, I'm not an artist at all. I mean, I try occasionally to do something creative, but
patrons are very important. They're very.
There you go. I'm somewhere in the arts. But like I just know there is so much of art that actually is teachable. You may not ever be Picasso, right? Or you may not ever be Nate, but you could be proficient, right? You like, and I just think we've got to think about more things, like more of life should be as much of a regimented sequence learning process as we do with sports.
And I think a lot of that you can learn from the arts, because you may not be Pablo Picasso or, Pancho Brown, but you could be a graphic designer. You can be an illustrator, and those skill sets are still transferable to those the valuable work sources. Somebody had to build the logo and the business cards for Upsurge. So you're still able to find a market in your talent, and you don't have to always be what the pinnacle of that source is.
Well, and these days, actually, in the entrepreneur world, in the tech world, like design first is becoming like the signature thing in what differentiates companies from one another. And really, if you think about it, the thing that made Apple was the design.
Yeah.
It was a PC, right? It was a PC that was more beautiful and more well thought through in terms of how you interfaced with it, right? Yeah. There's a lot more to that story, I know. But like if you think about, just you hold up an old PC and you hold up a Mac from back when the silver and the white and the it's just it was a game changer because it was beautiful.
And they sold us on the future of that tool,
That's right.
Not on where they were currently.
Well, and it was because they were very design first, right? The guy that is a famous designer, this guy Johnny Ives, was Steve Jobs' partner in the the relaunch of the Mac. And read that story sometime about how they thought about the design and the beauty of what they were trying to create. And I just think design in particular, art in particular, has a place in so many facets of society where, where you can do pure art if that's the thing that moves you, but you can also use your art to impact the way we live through technology. And that's a really powerful deployment of art, in my opinion.
And I'm loving what you're saying, because how it will influence the other industries in the city is to partner more, because the technology age, if nothing has influenced us more in the last 2 years, this quarantine has definitely forced all of us to learn technology.
That's right.
We went from being in an actual station where all I had to do was show up and know what I'm gonna talk about that day, to me having to figure out lights and sound and mics and it hurt my head. I'm gonna just be honest, but it forced me to know more. And even putting on my own things now virtually, I'm able to do it with ease because this transition, everybody was pushed out there. And I think if we were, already encouraged to do more of this, then even putting on plays, I've had to learn how to use technology to still produce, my type of art. And it's been hard, but I really think this city could thrive, being the next Silicon Valley for tech and such.
But in the good way. In the good way.
In the good way.
Not in the bad way.
Where it's beneficial, not just
in the
experimental.
In the way that is good for more of the people who are already here.
Yes.
Right.
So that's what I'll be following you to learn that aspect of it. How, the everyday individuals who are already incorporating this can thrive in this. And then how does it still benefit the community? We do see that in many of those cities where an industry has risen, and you see it's kind of dissipated everything else in the community because it's not feeding the place where it's thriving. It's kind of choking that community.
Well, I mean, I think that part of it is that a lot of that started 30 and 40 years ago in those cities. And shame on us as a country that we weren't more conscious back then of what it would mean if you built these industries where there was so much growth and so much wealth building, but we weren't intentional about making sure that other people got to participate.
Right.
And so, I think that in some ways we're sort of lucky that we're putting this focus on it now, because I think we can learn from the good parts of what those cities did, and we can avoid the bad parts.
Yeah.
Right. And we can draw on, also just my team's natural way of operating, is we want lots of voices in the conversation to help make sure we do it the right way, and to sort of be shaping how this thing grows. So, so look, I always love talking to you. I hope we can have another conversation when I'm a little further in. I'm not quite 4 months in yet. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about in a few months.
I'm really excited, because if, I really have admired you for really getting in there with individuals who are often left to their own, devices or their own creativity, and really helping a lot of us to really see the strength within ourselves and beyond just being an artist. So I felt more empowered to be a business owner and a business person after meeting you and just hearing the conversation. And
and I would say the other way, I would thank you, because, I'm I get as much out of those, those opportunities to be in community with, with people. And, I think I'm the lucky one because I get to see this brilliance across the city that too many people don't like. There aren't a lot of people in Baltimore that have had the window onto Baltimore that I've had, like just being able to work with the kind of people that I've gotten to work with from every corner of the city. And we're just so deep with brilliance. We are. And you guys have shaped me as much as I hope I had a little impact on you. So, let's keep building together, and let me come back in a couple months when I can tell you some more like concrete stuff.
I'm gonna be here, and maybe we'll be a little bit more flashier because we're still learning this.
Maybe we can sit down in person then, right?
Yes, please.
I'm double vaccinated now, so.
Almost there. I'm kind of baby stepping, but I got to get my nerve up, get this balance off. But as we close out the interview with Miss Jamie McDonald, I have a final question. One, I want you to tell people where they can find you at on social media. If they are one of these experts that you're looking for, how can they get in contact or learn more about it?
So this, but I am not a social media person. I am a person who believes like
she dabbles.
Well done is better than well said. So I don't do a lot of talking on social media. I just try to do stuff. But I am on social media. I don't talk a lot, but Upsurge is my thing now. Okay. And so it's upsurgebaltimore.com is the website, and Upsurge Be More is the handle everywhere.
Okay.
And Jason Bass actually is like, he's leading our communications and culture stuff. And so Jason, you can definitely hit him up and talk to him too about Upsurge. I'm sure a lot of your audience knows Jason. And so if you want to plug in with Upsurge, there's a like a connect thing on our website.
Okay.
And there's some specific ways that people can get involved, or they can just sign up just to stay. We're going to be putting out like a weekly thing where it'll have opportunities for people to do stuff.
Okay.
And opportunities and we'll be shouting out stuff that other people are doing. So we want to hear other things that are happening in the community. So that would be a great way to get plugged in.
And I'll put the website on this post, so it'll be in the description section for people to be able to catch it. So my final question to you is, I ask all my guests, what advice would you give to your 17-year-old self? And what question would you ask to your 100-year-old self?
Wow, you should have told me this one ahead of time.
I like to catch them off guard.
God, my 17-year-old self, I was such a different kid.
And not really to change anything, but, kind of ease those bumps.
Yeah, I think the thing I probably would have told my 17-year-old self was to see, I think when I was that age, I saw a lot of the things that I now realize are my strengths as my weaknesses, right? Because my intense determination, my focus, my blinders about things, right? I've always kind of been this way. And I think when I was younger, I saw that my seriousness in a way, I think I saw that as a weakness. And now I really recognize that my seriousness is a strength, right? That my intensity is a strength. So that's probably the thing I would tell my 17-year-old self. And then my 100-year-old self, what question would I ask? I think I would probably ask myself if I left my mark on people.
Interesting. And it's a question that is definitely something you can ask periodically, like the business, like the postcard used to send out to us randomly. I kind of got this question from doing that exercise, and it kind of helps you to see where you are. And it's not anything to pressure, but just see how you are.
No, it's a great question. It's a great question.
I appreciate you for joining me and taking the
I
time
appreciate
out
you for
today.
having me.
Anytime I can help or anything I can help you with, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. And you're always welcome to come back to the Artist Exchange radio show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So for the rest of the show, I'm going to give a little bit of information on how we can best be our most professional self. But before I go to all that, we got a couple more minutes left. Tricks, that's very perceptive. Lalit, hi from India. Hey, Lalit from India. We're international, baby. But I asked Miss Jamie on not just, but I asked her on to this month was full of people who I felt were really forward thinking in their path. And we had a month full of experts that came on. We have one interview that we're rescheduling, and that's the gentleman from the magazine that I was featured in. And we're going to have him on in May. And we have some interesting interviews coming up in May. But April was definitely dedicated to individuals who are very forward thinking in their path, like Miss McDonald. And a workshop I did with her in the Courageous program was very informative and really gave me a lot of things that, honestly, it wasn't until this pandemic that a lot of that information was really useful, because I had to take a lot of stuff off the table and really focus on what I had and what was really important to me and what could get me through this, both financially, mentally, physically, emotionally. And it has really been very helpful to go back and look at some of those notes. So I definitely invited her, and I'm glad she rounded out this month of April with her information on it. So if you are into tech, look up her website. We're going to put that, I'm going to share that on our social media as well. So you'll be able to look into that if that's the world that you live in. And I know a lot of tech individuals that run the gamut. So definitely check her out. But on this side, it's a little, it's not sad, but boy, you crazy. We in this show at 6:30. I'll have all that talking me. But I wanted to.
You asked the question. You asked.
But I wanted to. So today's date is April 30th. Today is my father's birthday. And many people don't ever hear me talking about my dad. And that's because I lost him when I was in the second grade. I was turning 7. Yeah, I had turned 7. And he died a week or two before my birthday. And his birthday is actually today. And he died a couple days from now, like the 1st. Was it the 1st or the 2nd of May? And I've lived life without a lot of emotion. I learned as I grew up to kind of tuck my emotions in and don't show them, because people will definitely abuse them. And about 2 years ago, after interviewing tons and tons of authors, and I still have been interviewing, shout out to Miss Patricia Johnson for introducing me to a lot of them. And I really became close with a couple of them. Shout out to Hakeem, the Philly man, and Miss C. Natasha Richburg. Two very important people who have been kind of mentors and friends in my life in the author world, kind of encouraged me and pushed me to write my own book. So for the last couple years, I went through one journey in trying to write a book, but it just wasn't the right partnership. It wasn't the right group around me. And I really had to solidify the people that I have. So there's a book coming, and I'm currently working on that right now. And I am in a space of physically going through therapy. Like, so the book, I can tell you this much, the book will feel like you are kind of a fly on a wall in my therapy session. My hope is to not only normalize therapy, but and I feel like we're kind of right there now. Therapy isn't such a stigma as it has been in the past, but not only normalizing getting the help, but actually utilizing the help and moving forward. A lot of us have created these trauma bonds with friends and family and lovers and so on and so forth. And we've gotten used to knowing what the problem is now and living with the problem. Now we no longer have to do that. We can actually move forward and thrive as individuals that are healthy. Today's topic was building on our strengths. So find those things that make you your strongest and build yourself up off of those things. Stop trying to look for outside things to kind of validate you and strengthen you and encourage you, and find those things within yourself. Often you'll find yourself around a lot of people who don't mean you any good. And we often overlook the people who do make us, our best selves. But this book that I'm working on is really a passion of love. And my parents are kind of a big portion of this book. And there's going to be many chapters dedicated to my relationship with them, my experiences with my parents, more my dad than my mom. But today I posted a photo, and it really, the reason I never really took the time to acknowledge this date was because of what I felt today. I started writing a Facebook post this morning, and it did not get posted until 3 hours ago, actually. And it was really because I wasn't ready to really be that vulnerable. And what I felt happening is actually what happened. And often, and kind of the premise for my book is how I had to almost break my own heart to move forward, to heal, to grow, to achieve, to feel love. And this book is a testament to that and is an example of that. And it's definitely a bunch of short stories and experiences that I've gone through that kind of show me finally saying, you know what, I have to break myself in order to move forward, because I've gotten too comfortable with not showing emotions, or only showing the emotions that are aggressive. And I no longer want to be that person. And in order for me not to be that person, unfortunately, a lot of people have to go. A lot of people I had to distance myself from a lot of people. And the ones that I have not yet distanced myself from are on the list, and it's happening in time. But I'm a planner, and I've learned how to plan my life versus just randomly living it. And it is working for me. So this book, the title will be coming out soon. The promotion of it will be coming out soon. All I can say is soon right now, because we're a little behind schedule. But thanks to a really good friend, Blue Waters, who most don't know, he's a therapist, a licensed therapist, practicing therapist, and it's helping me through this process. And it's really just figuring out how to get some of these stories out and how to shape them. And I'll be interviewing him, as well as my editor and co-writer of this book, or writing coach rather, of this book, and soon. And I'm really excited about almost emptying myself out to fill myself back up. And to go back to this post, I wrote, on this day, I celebrate my father. Today is his birthday. I used to ignore this date and find ways to distract myself. For fear, I would have to keep feeling that pain of losing a father, a parent, way too soon. I choose to publicly express my growth and celebrate his life. And I ask everybody to join in me in helping to celebrate it, because I feel very hypocritical as a teacher who often I have a unique situation where I get to help people tell their stories. One, here on this platform, my other podcast, as well as a teacher, I get to help students kind of break through trauma and triggers and be able to tell their story to, motivate themselves to move forward and grow, but also to entertain other people and help them as well. But I was really thoroughly, just in the last 3 hours, all of the love and support that has come from this post, and I'm not a thirst trapper, so I don't write stuff for likes and giggles or for, posts. But I've realized when I write posts that are coming from my heart versus from my mind, the level of support that I get, and is encouraging me to be more authentic in my art. And I don't want to just put an image out there of myself, even though I am who I am and I am who I am, and I'm very happy with who I am. I'm learning to grow beyond that. So not necessarily changing or dropping anything about myself, but really growing from it. So I really am very much so. I'm very grateful and filled with gratitude in the outpour of love and support and just love and support from all my friends and family on this list. And I'm sure it's going to grow even probably now because I'm just looking at where it was before I started the show and just understanding this is not easy for me. I'm not a emotional person. I'm a passionate person, and that can often be confused with emotional. But I'm really passionate about who I am, the things that I love, the people that I love, and it is difficult being such a driven person with so much passion because you can often be misunderstood and yeah, mostly misunderstood. But if you are going through something, if you are missing someone, if you are grieving still, because I never really, being so young, it's hard to grieve at the age of 6 and 7. That's something that is not really supported, especially for a young boy. Is this, I don't think anybody thought I felt I could feel anything at such an age like that. And it's been really therapeutic. My aunt Val, one of my father's sisters, she gave me this book. As you can tell, it's an old picture album. She gave me this old book, and it was filled with photos. I didn't have any photos of I think I had one photo, and that's the photo I posted today of my dad. And it's a book full of just memories and photos of him. And this is actually his photo. This is the first photo in the book of my dad. Obviously, I'm chunky like my mom. But and me looking through this book and looking through many of the pictures, and it's one of the reasons I take pictures. I love taking pictures, and I have to learn how to be in some of those pictures now. So I take a lot of selfies now. But as I'm looking through a lot of these photos, I'm seeing, things that I could recall. I have a really vivid memory. I'm seeing myself as a kid. So I'm showing some of the photos. And just seeing myself, I didn't have a lot of pictures. How as you move, you lose things. And as my mom moved, we lost a lot of photos. Black people steal pictures, so people taking pictures and we losing pictures and moves. It really, it was sad because I didn't have a lot of photos of myself as a child, if any photos of myself. And it was just very, crazy seeing these photos, a picture with me and my mom. I'm the little baby in the burgundy. Just seeing these photos, it really just put me in a different place. And a lot of these photos you're going to see in the book as well. So that was one of the reasons I asked my aunt. My aunt she never let people see her photos because Black people steal photos. If you didn't know, watch your photo albums around your relatives and your friends too. And I asked her, I told her what I needed it for, and she made this book. She put this book together of all these photos of him. And, when a Black person give you their photo albums, you are, you're the love. I know I'm her favorite book. We ain't gonna tell my cousins that. But all these photos, that's another photo of my dad when he was a teenager. And just seeing these photos, I'm not gonna show you all of them because some of them are embarrassing, but but just seeing these photos, this is my aunt, me and my aunt Val. This is similar to the photo that you saw on my page if you look at my Facebook page. But this was really the first time that I had went over my dad's house as an older child. I was probably in pre-K or kindergarten in this photo, and it was really just like the first memory that I have of my dad. And I lost him a few years later, so I didn't really have a lot of life with him. But my aunt Val has been a very supportive person in terms of keeping me connected with my father's family. This is a photo taken, I believe, maybe a year or so before he passed away. And anybody who is going through a grief process, you know how hard it is to just pick up your life or just to even address what the issue is, the grief itself. And for me, I never dealt with the grief. You know, I remember being at the funeral and I was passing tissues out to everybody and I didn't know how I should feel. And this book is really giving me it's giving me a lot of insight on how I should feel. A friend of mine, Miss Nicole Scrogin, she's been a guest on here several times. She now has a podcast based on her losing both of her parents. And it's a grieving website. And it's not a sad stories and stuff like that, but she tells, you know, what it's like, you know, what is life like, you know, grieving, specifically over a parent or any loved one, really. So I'm gonna have her on here to kind of talk about her podcast a little bit and just share not burgundy, not. First of all, sir, I know that's blue. Is that blue? But this is really, it's been very cathartic to me. This is really the first year that I felt comfortable even sharing anything about my dad, because I talk about my mom more than I ever talk about him. But this photo album is just filled with just pictures that I've never seen of him before, and seeing him in, you know, kind of a different space. If you used to seeing somebody a certain way, but these photos are letting me see him as a child, as a teenager, and it's filled with just photos of him, and it's giving me a lot of insight on him. I've seen all these types of pictures of my mom, but never of my dad, and it is. No, I'm not. Oh, that's George. No, first of all, no, George. I'm not going to show you those things. They're going to be buried. They're going to stay in this book and never be shown. But it really is, you know, I think it's befitting, as I'm not close to 40 yet. I'm not 40 yet, but I'm getting close to it. As I'm going into that space in my life, I'm learning how to be more vulnerable, which is not an easy thing. Even in today's life, it's not a very easy thing for me. So this process is showing me how to be vulnerable. And thankfully, I have a good friend, Blue, who will be back in May. A shout out to the Cocktail Social team. They've gone through a lot of issues with family, losing family, and, you know, this pandemic. So they'll be back in May with the Cocktail Social. But thanks to Blue, I've been more able to kind of purge a little bit more and be vulnerable. And we all know, especially as Black people, we try to be as strong as possible and walk around with that S on our chest as much as we can. And it's just not, yes. And we had 2 of our hosts with COVID. Yes. So it really, I won't open my business out there, but yeah, so this has been just a blessing. I have to, say thank you to my aunt for putting this together as an early birthday present to me, and just letting me see stuff that I had forgotten. And, you know, pictures have a way. I hope we aren't so digitally. I know we was talking about the tech world and moving into the future in the first part of the show, but I hope technology is not taking us away from taking pictures and having hard copies of photos, because we can lose our computers and all our pictures go along with it. But a photo album can really stand the test of time. And this is another photo. This was actually taken the day of my father's funeral. I don't know where my mother was at in life when she was dressing me, but she always dressed me like I was a 40-year-old man, a pimp, if you will. I wore a lot of leather, a lot of white, a lot of black and white. So that was my mom dressing me. And yes, I had a high top fade that for the most of my life. But it is this. I mean, do y'all keep photo albums? Yes, I love taking photos, George. I still take photos. I still have cameras that I, need to get developed. Do they even still develop photos? But I love taking photos. I love going through photo albums and such. And this is really giving me a different space and a different energy as I'm continuing to write this book and such. And I really want to help people to do this. And it's one of the things that I also do. I do legacy workshops where I show people how to do legacy interviews. I do legacy interviews with families and individuals that may have a family member that is getting older and they want to do interviews. So if you're looking for one of those interviews, hit me up. I travel. I've gone to North Carolina. I've gone to Philly. I've gone to Boston, and we've done these interviews before. But this was definitely a blessing to me to get this book, because it really made this journey and kind of writing my story and journaling about my story up until this point in my life, because my life is not even over yet. But it really just it really gave me a lot of perspective and significance in telling my story. I help everybody tell their stories. I'm an actor, so I'm always telling some character story, but I put the focus on myself and started to create this space for myself to be more transparent and more vulnerable. I've always been adventurous, but when it comes to exposing who I am, that's always been private. I've always been a very private person, but I'm learning how to just open up a little bit and give a little bit and share and just be more vulnerable. I posted a lot of these photos, so you can find a lot of these photos. This is my mom. If you look at this lady right here, but you grief is hard, and you don't know when it's coming. You don't know when it's will hit you. Some of us, we let it all out in the beginning. I remember losing my great grandmother, and that's what happened. I let it all out in the beginning, and I've been fine, with that. But there's never a time. We can't dictate when grieving is over or when it should start or how we should go through it. But we have to find healthy ways to release it. And eventually it will get easier. And people who don't feel that way, it does get easier, but you have to work on it. It doesn't get easier on its own. And losing my dad, I think that's been a void in my life for a very long time since it happened. And I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on me growing up. And if you are blessed to have your parents, take every opportunity you can to, share time with them and be in their space and love on them and have them love on you. And I know a lot of our families are in spaces where that's not a thing, but make it a thing. Break that cycle of distance and hard-heartedness and unforgiveness, if that even is a word. But yeah, this has been a great show. I was kind of I think I hesitated in posting that image earlier because I didn't know how to speak on it. And I knew I would have to acknowledge it on the show today. And I wanted to really, give space. And I posted something like this a minute ago, but give space to the inner child, not only of yourself, but of your parents, and learning how to forgive it. I think I took so long to express my grief over my dad because I've spent a lot of years angry at him for leaving me in a space where I needed a dad. I needed that image. I needed that role model. And at such an age of 7 where, life is just starting to open its eyes to you and you're starting to learn what it is and you're starting to learn so much about the world. And I was a very spectating child. I saw everything. I watched everything. And I spent a lot of time being angry and frustrated at, the fact that I didn't have a dad or a present dad. But time heals a lot of wounds, and so does action. So you have to get up and do something. And I wanted to really relinquish a lot of the struggle, a lot of the pain and hurt. And I chose to put it in a book and share it and be a blessing to other people that may be going through this, other little Black boys that may have gone through this, other grown men that have gone through this and still at a space where I'm at, where it was at. But this show is that platform. We consistently are.
Comments.
You said what?
Comments.
People making, do you think life would be different? I don't know. Who asked that question? I think I think life is always going to be what it is. I think it would have been a different journey because I was just starting to get to know him. My aunt took the initiative to bridge that gap. And just a few years after that, he passed away. So I think life would have been different in terms of my relationship with him. I think having that relationship would have definitely made things different. I would have probably made a lot of different choices. But I do think life would have been different. Just last night, I do a show called Where Are You Radio that's out of Atlanta. Check it out, whereareyouradio.com. The morning show, I do the morning show, and we had on Fridays we do a question. And one of the questions that we brought up, we give out advice, and one of the questions that was sent in was, about a parent that wasn't in your life that's trying to now be in your life. And my statement was, I never give people advice to distance themselves from a parent. And the reason I say that is because I've distanced myself in the past from my mom, and it wasn't anything about our relationship. It was just where I was in life. But losing a dad at such a young age, you appreciate your parents more. I think I appreciated my mom much more because she was there. And not having a parent for whatever reason, if they're strung out or in jail or just absent, it makes a difference in a child's life. And we can say all day long, I'm stronger than my struggles and I'm a victor. You can say that all day long until you've lost a parent or until you no longer have the ability, or if you've never had the ability to have that parent, you can't really speak on that because we can be strong. We can move forward. Life goes on. but there's definitely a missing piece to it. It's definitely a missing space in your life. And I can feel, and I've always felt the space that was missing. And I never tried to fill that space. And that I think that has helped me, even though I still made some not so good decisions, but I think I've never tried to fill that space with anything. And it's just been a missing space. And it was different from the missing space that I felt for grandparents that died or friends that have died or other family members that have died. It's different. The space was different. Losing a parent can be tremendous. It can be devastating. It can be numbing. And it was all those things. And it wasn't until recently that I allowed myself to even feel those things. I was very aware of the process, the journey, but recently I've learned how to feel. And it wasn't just about crying, but just feel. Today, I allowed myself this morning to feel, that feeling of missing something, even if it was something you never had. I allowed myself to feel that thing. Even that this photo exists, I don't have a lot of photos with my dad. I now have a lot of photos of him, but I still don't have a lot of photos with him. So me remembering that day, remembering what he smelled like, remembering how he sound, knowing those similarities that we had in common, understanding those things and being aware of those things. I definitely think things would have been different. I don't regret life, but I know things would have been different. So if you are a dad out there and you aren't in your child's life, get your shit together. If you are a child out there and you have a parent that you haven't seen that's still out there, get it together. Get it together. Don't keep letting anger dictate your actions, because anger can keep a hold on us and force us to make decisions that aren't healthy for us. Anger. And this, children, young and old children, you deserve a relationship with that person, even if that person doesn't deserve one with you. And in closing out today, I really want to stress that, we are in a space right now where we are so easy to erase people and get people out, get out my life, get out my space. We're so quick to do that, but we definitely don't understand how impactful or harmful it is to us as individuals when we just erase people, because it can happen to you. And it's not a good feeling when it's in reverse, when someone takes your humanness away by simply just erasing you and moving you out of their space. So, as we approach Mother's Day and then Father's Day and birthdays, and, do better with your communication, set boundaries. Some people, the reason our relationships are the way they are is because we don't have boundaries. And a lot of my relationships have gotten difficult. I've been called difficult because I've learned to set boundaries. And they got difficult because originally I did not show up as myself. I did not set boundaries. But now that I set boundaries, it's much easier for me to be calmer in my conflicts with individuals. It's much easier for me to communicate exactly how I feel and set that line of demarcation where I'm not going to budge for how I feel. I'm not going to live with it. I'm not going to live in that anymore. So today has been really interesting day, and in me deciding I wanted a short, sweet message. I didn't want to go in because I want you to read the book, but I wanted to just share that with myself. There's a lot of stuff about me personally that people don't know, and it's really not. A lot of it isn't your business. That's why you don't know it. But as me and Jamie were talking, part of me being an artist is sharing, and part of this platform is engagement. And if you want people to invest in who you are in terms of your talent, your gifts, your passions in life, you have to be vulnerable. Money is too tight nowadays. Even with the people who have the money, it's too tight nowadays for people to just blindly support you. I want to know where my money going. I'm not invested in somebody who believes in Trump. I'm not spending my money on somebody who shows hate towards Black people or LGBTQ people or children or the elder. I'm not sharing my money with people who do those things. You know, I'm not sharing my time and my energy and my talents with people who do those things. I'm always here whenever you want to grow. But until that day, my money's off for you. So sharing your story helps people to know who you are. And me being vulnerable, it has caused a lot of tension in my life because people will try to play on that. But just as much tension was created in that, a lot of awareness of who people really are, a lot of awareness, tension, but also a lot of great things have happened once I exposed who I am, and not even for other people, for myself. When you're carrying around 30 years of grief, that is dangerous in the wrong hands, in the wrong space, in the wrong opportunity. I ate something and there's some chips and I can feel it. But growing in that space, you have to really, to grow in that space, you have to really relinquish a lot. And sometimes it's just telling your story. It could be that simple. It could be that simple. And I've held on to this relationship with my dad for a long time, 30 years. 30 in a couple of days, it'll be 30 years since he's passed away. And it really feels not so different, but the impact of the time and the grief, the impact really of the grief, I've learned to use it. I've learned to, because as an artist, I've used that pain and I've watched it slowly turn from pain to a joy or a celebration. So today was the first day I've actually celebrated my father's life and the memory of him. And I'm thankful for my Aunt Val for one, putting this album together for me and giving me a gift of remembering that will often dredge up emotion, dredge up feelings, but in you dredging those things up and pulling them up, you have the opportunity to let them go and release them. I felt like for the last 30 years, I've been tied to a bad memory, a bad feeling, grief. And in one post, I felt like it just lifted off my shoulders. So today I do feel lighter, and I thank you all for the people who are watching this, who have watched this, who will be watching this. Nathan Strode, please give me a shout out. Who is Nathan Strode? Hey, Nathan Strode, here's a shout out. I don't know who that is. Oh, a listener. Hey, Nathan Strode. How demanding of you. But hey, how you doing? Send me a message. Let me learn who you are. But in all saying all of that, I'm very gracious. I'm very thankful. I'm very at peace. And I'm happy. I have a lot of joy, and I'm choosing that joy over stress and anxiousness and trauma and triggers. And it's all in our choice. It's not that easy to make the choice. I'm not making it seem like it's easy, but it's as simple as having a choice and choosing the things in life that you want. So this has been another episode of the Artist Exchange. I said it. He said, please. I don't know who Nathan Strode is, so I can't, just give you a shout out if I just said your name twice. So that's a shout out.
No, you said how demanding of him. And I said, no, he said, please. That's what I was saying.
Give me a shout out, Nathan Strode. Share, like, and subscribe. Because you sound like one of them YouTubers. Share, like, and subscribe. I gave you a shout out, Nathan Strode. I said it 3 times. That means it's serious. That's a habit at this point. But this has been another edition of the Artist Exchange Radio Show. Look out for us every Friday at 5 p.m. sharp. Now that our station owner is an entrepreneur again.
How you doing?
I can't. I'm over life. Just shout out to everybody. Shout out. Look out for some great things coming from the Artist Exchange. Vashta Blue Jewelry. Just look out. Some changes about to happen. And it's going to be marvelous. Peace out, people.
Peace out.